Pronto, professor, pode começar o evento.
Good afternoon to all the students. Today we have the presentation of Professor Luis Bravo from the Pittsburgh University. Professor Luis Bravo is Assistant Director of Academic Affairs at Pittsburgh University, and he will share with us his reflections about the pandemic impact in academic activities. Today, we will have one workshop. So, Professor Luis Bravo will make a brief presentation, and then we will open to discussions. So, if you have any question, please type the question that we will present to all the professors to discuss. It will be very good if you have a good participation of all the people that are here. So, Professor Luis Bravo, can you start, please?
Sure. Andrea, do you need to translate or?
Yeah, he has just spoken in English. I wasn't expecting it. Would you like me to translate into Portuguese, Professor Edgar? Edgar?
Está mudo novamente.
The idea is that Professor Luis Bravo will present in English, and after each slide, Andrea will translate.
Ok, então agora eu não preciso traduzir o que você falou.
Ok.
Go.
Ok, there we go.
Let me open my presentation first. 1 second. All right. I hope everybody can see this, and I will make it a little bit bigger. All right. So we're going to be talking today about the impact of the pandemic on academic life. And to start with, I wanted to share the agenda of what I have prepared for today, which is talking a little bit about early in the pandemic, talking a lot about the year online that we had, remote education, and then end with a higher education today and the future. And this is the area that I hope that we will have a discussion, that we can talk about some of the things that are going on today and in the future as well. And I have some top items in there for us to discuss and to kind of share with each other. And I really hope we can do a fairly interactive kind of connection.
Então, boa tarde, eu espero que todos estejam conseguindo visualizar isso. Hoje vamos falar sobre o impacto da pandemia na vida acadêmica. Gostaria aqui de compartilhar com vocês o que eu planejei para hoje. Nós vamos começar com o início da pandemia, o que houve no início da pandemia, o nosso ano online, né, foi o ano de 2020, agora começo de 2021, e em seguida a educação superior hoje e no futuro. Então eu vou fazer outros paralelos entre o presente e o futuro ao longo desse workshop. Eu gostaria de que, depois da minha apresentação, nós tivéssemos uma discussão bem participativa de todos e que vocês possam me perguntar e a gente possa debater bastante sobre esses tópicos.
Thank you. And all right, early in the pandemic, as we all know, and I remember very clearly when it started in March of 2020, at least for us, it was a moment in which was filled with uncertainty. And this move to virtual classes That, you know, I remember very clearly when we started that, and this is an anecdote to a connection that I talked to some of my colleagues, that I was going to see them in another month when we went remote. However, you know, this is 1 month now has become a year and a half and counting. André?
Ok. Bom, começando então sobre o começo da pandemia. Eu lembro nitidamente disso ter começado em março de 2020 e, de fato, foi um momento recheado de incerteza, né, principalmente no que toca a essa transição para as aulas virtuais, né. A sensação que eu e meus colegas tínhamos era de que nos veríamos dentro de um mês. No entanto, esse mês se tornou um ano e ainda sem previsão de retorno. Parecia que era alguma coisa que ia passar rapidamente, mas, no entanto, já faz aí um ano que estamos vivendo esse começo ainda de pandemia.
Great. And just to talk about two different groups actually 3 different groups that were, the first 2 are the ones that were the most affected. First, the students faced a very difficult time. I work here as a advisor, professional advisor, especially connecting with our certificates that we work with students. And in terms of the advising, we have a very close connection with the students in which we work very closely with them. And to having that become an online setup became very difficult to actually talk to the students and get a feeling of how they were doing and how they were developing in their studies. And because of that close relationship that we have with some of the students, it was very easy to gather from them that difficulty that students were having. There was a lot of difficulty in connecting with faculty, you know, and this is something that faculty also complained about, that was this connection between faculty and students that you had in the classroom. That did not translate very well when it went to an online experience.
Ok. Então, a seguir vamos falar sobre 3 diferentes grupos da minha análise sobre essa transição e esse impacto da pandemia. O primeiro grupo é o de alunos. Como eu fui um conselheiro próximo desses alunos com o meu trabalho, né, acadêmico, eu tive contato direto com eles e pude analisar e sentir essas dificuldades com mais clareza. No primeiro momento, todos tiveram algum tipo de dificuldade, né, e de uma maneira geral, continuaram tendo por algum tempo, porque, num princípio, eu pude ajudá-los a administrar o que eles sentiam com relação a esse distanciamento entre o aluno e a universidade, né, e a vida acadêmica, a partir do momento que ela se tornou virtual. Então, algumas pessoas, alguns deles se davam bem desde o início com essa transição, no entanto, a maioria sentiu e sente ainda esse gap, esse distanciamento, e ainda existe essa sensação de algum tipo de dificuldade, como se fosse uma desconexão entre o mundo acadêmico e o mundo online. Existe uma grande, não digo reclamação, mas uma grande, de certa forma, insatisfação, né, sobre esse gap que existe entre as duas realidades agora, virtual e online e real acadêmica.
Exactly. So one of the problems that we had especially was with international students. So international students that work here at university, and not just at my university, but in the United States in general. And I think this is a global issue, right? So as situations started getting worse, students were caught without necessarily being able to go home, or with fears of going home, and possibly the traveling international was becoming more and more difficult. And so that created a particular problem for international students. And I'm going to show some data on this in a couple minutes. So this is a particular group of students that were extremely affected by the pandemic this past year.
Ok, então, desses alunos, talvez o que mais tenha apresentado algum tipo de problema em adaptação foram os alunos, os estrangeiros, né, alunos internacionais que estão não apenas na Universidade de Pittsburgh, mas assim como foi um perfil, uma característica de todos os alunos migrantes que estão nos Estados Unidos como um todo. Os problemas começaram quando os alunos muitos tiveram que voltar para casa e outros não sabiam, tinham essa incerteza se conseguiriam voltar ou não. Então, em alguns momentos eu vou mostrar dados sobre esse problema característico em especial.
Okay. The next one are the faculty members, right? So the adjustment to an online basis was extremely quickly. In here, as an example, at the University of Pittsburgh, but not only the University of Pittsburgh, I think a lot of the different universities, we generally have a spring break just around March, when you generally are going to have students going away. It's like a break for about a week. And during that break was when we got the word that the pandemic was starting and that we were going to be moving to a more different kind of format. At that time, we didn't know exactly what that meant, but what university immediately did was that it increased that spring break from 1 week to 2 weeks. And the faculty were more or less asked to change their curriculum and change everything to become this online setting within 2-week period, which you can imagine how difficult that can be for a lot of the faculty members. And I'm sure a lot of you have actually gone through a lot of the similar situations. Of course, there was a lot of skepticism from faculty as well as students about the quality of what this instruction was going to be like without that connection with the students that the faculty generally have.
Ok. O outro grupo de pessoas que eu vou desenvolver agora é sobre os docentes. Aqui nos Estados Unidos, a gente tem o Spring Break, que são de 1 a 2 semanas de intervalo, né, de férias, em todo março, e foi exatamente quando a pandemia começou a se intensificar. Então, os professores, os docentes tiveram esse tempo, foi exatamente nesse momento em que a transição para as aulas online e tudo o que acompanha as aulas online, como, por exemplo, o currículo dos alunos, de que maneira isso ia acontecer, o formato, que foi pensado. Então, os professores os docentes tiveram que se adaptar de uma maneira muito rápida e eficaz. Não houve opção, né? Porque a universidade precisava de respostas, precisava de um plano concreto para que esses alunos voltassem e já começassem o ano acadêmico online. Então, houve uma série de ceticismo, tanto da parte dos alunos quanto da própria universidade, sobre a eficácia e funcionamento dessa transição. Ainda há, talvez, na medida em que não se sabe exatamente como isso vai reverberar daqui para frente. Mas todos os professores tiveram que se recriar, né, se reinventar dentro desse novo processo, e acredito que vocês também tenham tido uma série de desafios, dificuldades para fazer essa transição para o mundo acadêmico online.
And then, of course, the administration of the university. had to think very hard about what to do next. In here, especially, which universities are ran by the funding that we get either by students paying for the education, because even our public schools are paid just at a lower rate than what some of the private schools are paid. So this created a lot of issues. We actually had some universities that closed completely and are no longer in existence. We had some universities that they had to cut certain programs, they had to cut certain things that they had. University of Pittsburgh has managed to do very well. There was no layoffs or letting some of their faculty or staff go. University of Pittsburgh was actually very conservative and very careful on how they approach this, but trying to keep as much as possible of the quality of education. So the administration varied a lot from different schools. And when we get to the discussion part, I'm very interested to hearing what everybody else has felt in the different locations, the different areas of the world that we're talking to.
Ok, o que houve também dentro desses novos desafios foi que a administração da universidade teve que pensar muito sobre o que fazer e o que não fazer dentro dessa nova perspectiva de aulas online. A universidade recebe fundos, né, que tem que dar satisfações, e em várias universidades, mesmo que públicas, os alunos pagam taxas, e o que houve é que muitas universidades não conseguiram administrar essas dificuldades, tiveram que fechar, né? E dentro das outras que se mantiveram abertas, houve muitos programas que foram cortados, muitos tipos de aulas e programas que foram cortados por falta de fundos e por dificuldades de adaptação à nova realidade. A Universidade de Pittsburgh, em particular, foi muito conservadora e cuidadosa nestas questões, para manter em mente a qualidade de todos os programas, das aulas e do ensino como um todo, né? Na verdade, o que houve foi uma enorme variação entre todo esse novo paradigma, entre todas as escolas. Não houve um padrão, não houve uma padronização, nem um padrão, né? Na verdade, cada uma se virou como pôde, e então isso criou uma grande variação de políticas entre uma escola e outra.
Okay, so next I promised that I was going to have some numbers on international students and actually talk a little bit about mobility as well in here. So as you can see, this is actually from the Institute of International Education, which is one of the organizations that keeps a lot of the information on international students. They're one of the major collaborators with the Fulbright program. If you are familiar with that, that's one of the biggest government-sponsored programs for exchanges that the United States have. So in this case, you can see that the number of students who left right at the beginning was about 18,000, which is not very many. The United States at any existing time has about a little bit over 1 million international students within the country. So we're talking about 92% decided to remain on campus in the United States. In some cases, they were already abroad, so they didn't leave or come back. They just stayed put. You can also see a big variation in the type of support that international students were able to get in campus during the summer period. So again, this is early in the pandemic, right? So a little bit, this is around the summertime, which here will be about May to August in general. So you can see here some of the numbers, in terms of support, even in guidance to the students. Only 78% of the institutions that participated in this survey actually had prepared guidance about visas, about the different things that they were doing, health and well-being of students, and there's a variety of different things. So you can see that it is very uneven, this kind of process.
Bom, professor, eu vou resumir aqui um pedaço. Com relação aos números, se você depois puder repetir para mim, eu vou repetindo logo depois. Como eu prometi para vocês, vocês podem ver aqui alguns números, né, informação numérica de porcentagem do que eu havia comentado. Esse Instituto de Educação Internacional, né, que é um dos grandes órgãos patrocinados pelo governo, em termos de intercâmbio estudantil. Parece que mais de 1 milhão de alunos nos Estados Unidos, acadêmicos nos Estados Unidos, são advindos de outros países, vêm desse intercâmbio, né? Agora, com relação aos números, se o senhor puder ir falando, eu vou repetindo.
Sim, aqui, por exemplo, an example,
okay.
18,000, about a little bit over 18,000 left the United States at the beginning of COVID-19.
Ok. Então, mais ou menos, um pouco mais de 18 mil alunos deixaram os Estados Unidos assim que começaram assim que a pandemia se instalou.
92% of the international students remain in the United States. And this
92%,
is,
sorry.
yeah, and this is important to mention also that the universities asked them to stay because of visa issues or the possibility that they would not be able to come back for when the fall semester would start.
Ok, então, aproximadamente 92% dos alunos permaneceram nos Estados Unidos, grande parte porque as universidades pediram para que eles ficassem, já que poderia haver um grande problema com os vistos quando eles retornassem para os Estados Unidos. Poderia ser que eles não conseguissem renovar esse visto. Então, por isso, eles já acabaram ficando, mesmo durante a pandemia, mesmo não tendo as aulas presenciais.
Okay, and this next part here, to showing the support that international students got by the universities here in the United States. And again, this is a sample, but it is a strong sample from universities that receive a lot of international students. And you can see here that has been very uneven, the kind of support that was given to students.
Ok, então aqui também a gente tem o tipo de auxílio que eles obtiveram, que esses alunos obtiveram, e essa é uma pequena amostra, mas é uma amostra bem conceitual, né, bem forte, porque são muitas universidades que participaram dessa pesquisa. Então nós temos que o auxílio que esses alunos obtiveram durante esse tempo.
So, and in here, this last one, you can see in terms of the returning students to institutions. You can see like the gray is the one that had universities that had a substantial increase in number of international students, which is very unusual for this time period. But you can see the majority of them were looking at some kind of decline or stayed about the same as the previous year. So this area here this stayed the same, and this other three is some kind of decline, with the light green being substantial decline.
Certo. Então, aqui em cinza a gente tem o número de alunos internacionais que cresceu um pouco, que é bem atípico, né, durante essa área, durante esse tempo, e os outros três números são pequenas quedas no retorno desses alunos, né, que se foram. Antes o senhor também tinha mencionado que existe uma grande variação entre essas universidades na questão do auxílio entre elas, né? Varia muito entre uma universidade e outra, o tipo de auxílio que eles deram para os alunos.
Exactly. And this is the numbers of students that were new incoming students. So we're not talking about the students at state. We're only talking about the incoming students to university. So in general, the numbers of students in the United States in the last 4 years has slowly going down. This has kind of precipitated and increased that decline a little bit.
Ok, então nós estamos falando de alunos que estão iniciando a universidade, que estão, independente de quantos retornaram. Se você analisar os números, você verá que ao longo dos últimos quatro anos, esses números têm declinado um pouco.
Very good. Okay. So talk a little bit about the PIT experience, which I actually talked to you a little bit earlier, which was this idea of the spring break. And the spring break was when it started for us. And I remember very clearly going to work on the Monday of spring break and being told that I needed to get everything from my computer and make sure that I have it accessible for when I went to work remotely. Again, same idea that I had mentioned before. Faculty were, they extended to 2 weeks, and faculty were told that they needed to make their courses 100% online until the end of the semester within those 2 weeks, which is in big order to make that change.
Então, vamos falar sobre a experiência da Universidade de Pittsburgh, que começou com um intervalo, né, do Spring Break sendo adiado, para que todos os docentes tivessem um tempo hábil para programar, né, para processar todas as mudanças que deveriam ocorrer e ter tudo pronto até o retorno desses alunos, o que foi, na verdade, uma demanda muito intensa para todos.
Very good. And the next part is that, of course, we moved 100% online for the rest of the semester, but also during this period, study abroad. So this is the mobility, student mobility part, but all the study abroad programs were canceled. So the Pitt Study Abroad office spent a good part of the beginning of the pandemic bringing students that were already studying abroad back to the United States. And so that was in a huge task, because you're talking about something close to 15,000 students that were studying abroad, not 15,000, 1,500, sorry, 1,500 students that were studying abroad that they had to actually try to bring back to Pittsburgh.
Ok, então aqui a gente tem agora uma outra consequência disso também foi o cancelamento de todos os programas chamados, né, Study Abroad, que é para os alunos que estudavam no exterior, é isso? E então todos esses programas foram cancelados, o que remete a um grande impacto, porque eram 15 mil alunos estudando no exterior, é isso? E eles tinham...
1.500.
Ah, desculpa, 1.500 alunos estudando no exterior, o que ainda assim é um grande impacto, né? Foi uma das mudanças que essa adaptação teve que fazer.
So that also meant that there was a cancellation of the study abroad programs for the summer, for the next fall, and for the spring semesters. So that means a whole year of cancellation in a program that, that program survives by students going to study abroad. So it was something that university had to really work on and make sure that they survive coming out of this kind of process. But they were successful in doing so. And it took the study abroad office from Pittsburgh to completely reimagine themselves on how they were going to do, as well as in other universities throughout the system in the United States.
Ok, então, na verdade, o programa foi cancelado por um ano todo, né, e houve um grande esforço para saber como é que esse programa poderia se manter depois, porque ele foi cancelado pelo verão, o outono seguinte, a primavera, né, então são vários termos, né, vários semestres que tiveram que ser cancelados, e houve um grande esforço, não apenas da Universidade de Pittsburgh, mas de universidades ao redor dos Estados Unidos, para que esse programa se mantivesse e voltasse à ativa quando tudo isso passasse.
Again, working with students and advising them, and I mentioned this before, so I won't go too much into that. That was a struggle, and you could see the struggle that students were having. I also have this question here, which we can leave it to the end, is how was the initial period in your experience? So that we can discuss maybe at the end of the presentation, but I don't want to take too much more time.
Ok. Então, mais uma vez, só lembrando que eu já mencionei anteriormente que eu trabalhei diretamente com aconselhamento de estudos e foi muito difícil também para mim ao analisar as dificuldades que os alunos estavam tendo durante esse período. Eu também gostaria de deixar a pergunta que poderemos discutir posteriormente, para que vocês reflitam como é que foi o período inicial, essa experiência durante o período inicial para vocês, durante essa pandemia.
So the year online, so we all have actually gone through a year online, and you know, here's some information about some of the things that you can have, like especially in the United States, access and motivation for students was a big issue. So even though the majority of students in the United States were able to connect without many problems, we're talking about close to a little bit over 40% of the students had issues just being able to connect and participate in the classes. So the access was a big issue for students. And in the United States, it affected definitely groups that are minority groups and groups that are more in risk in here as well.
Vou passar agora os números, vamos conversar sobre os números, informação sobre números desse ano online, né? Os dois grandes desafios, em geral, durante esse ano online, foram o acesso e a motivação. No caso do acesso, o que aconteceu foi que aproximadamente 40%, professor? Isso.
Um pouquinho mais de 40%.
Um pouquinho mais de 40% tiveram problemas com o acesso e a participação, mesmo sendo nos Estados Unidos, né, o que inclui um grande desafio para ser resolvido. No caso, o senhor disse que é uma minoria? Minority?
Minority groups. Então, so the groups that are minority here in the United States, like Blacks, Hispanics, they had more problems in access than other groups.
Ok. Então, naturalmente, as minorias, os grupos minoritários dos Estados Unidos tiveram mais problema com acesso.
So another issue that you had was motivation. And you can see that about 42% of the students that were taking classes had major problems in staying motivated taking classes to the classes. So this means that a lot of students fell behind in their studies. They were dealing with a lot more things, including, like you can see, finding places that they could actually concentrate on the work, because now all of a sudden they were no longer in university where they could have the library or different places like that they could go to. Now they had to do it at home, and a lot of the times it was with the family, who understandably did not quite understand exactly that they were, you know, taking classes and were working in that location.
Ok, então uma outra questão da problemática desse ano online foi a motivação. Aproximadamente 42% desses alunos tiveram problemas em ficar em casa e assistir essas aulas. Eles acabaram tendo um desempenho menor e ficando para trás nos estudos, né? Eles apresentaram dificuldade de concentração, o que é natural, uma vez que eles, na universidade, tinham vários ambientes diferentes que poderiam favorecer a concentração e a diversidade de ambientes, por exemplo, as bibliotecas e outros espaços de estudo, que estimulavam que eles estivessem concentrados. Já em casa, com a família, eles não se sentiam motivados a assistirem às aulas e ficaram desmotivados e com dificuldade de concentração. Mesmo porque cada família, né, tem o seu espaço e a sua dinâmica, o que não é a mesma dinâmica de estar no espaço universitário.
So then looking at the COVID-19 effect in distance learning worldwide, the access, you can actually see again, governments had to subsidize or get free internet access to a lot of students, as well as devices. Many students were connecting through mobile phones, which to this day, I have no idea how they can do any kind of work in a cell phone, but they were able to. And, you can see that disparity throughout the world as well. Approximately 15% of students in Western Europe and North America were without internet, compared to 80%, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa. So the disparity became very pronounced because of the pandemic as well.
Ok. Então, nos efeitos, né, do estudo à distância, né, que a Covid-19 impactou, foi que, né, por exemplo, muitos governos precisaram subsidiar o acesso livre à internet, porque muitos alunos não podiam pagar por ele. Também, não apenas o acesso à internet em si, mas também dos aparelhos, de computadores e notebooks. Houve um grande... assim, o que acabou acontecendo foi que muitos desses alunos acabaram acedendo, né, tendo acesso ao estudo através de celulares, o que fica difícil entender como é que eles conseguiam fazer ou estudar através de celulares, mas muitos conseguiam fazer essa proeza, né? E tinham outros acessos também através de telefone fixo, né? Mas ficou muito claro as diferenças entre esse acesso no redor do mundo. Por exemplo, enquanto apenas 15% da Europa não tinha acesso, comparado a 80% da África subsaariana, o que é um número muito dísparo, se você for analisar em termos de mundo, existem essas grandes disparidades numéricas.
All right. Another issue that has come up and has become something that we have started really trying to monitor and to look at what the situation is mental health and safety of students. The numbers of depression, anxiety, and loneliness have just increased during this period, in which point in some institutions they have reported an increase in number of students that have demonstrated depression traits to 90% increase, which is an incredible amount. So this is something that we're going to be seeing becoming more the repercussions of this period in students in the universities are going to become something that we're going to learn a little bit more as it's coming, but there's definitely a clear case that shows that this has really becoming much bigger problem.
Ok, outro tópico de suma importância é analisar a saúde mental e a segurança dos alunos. né? Fica claro, ao longo desse processo, que essas questões, a questão de depressão, a ansiedade e a solidão, o isolamento e a solidão, ficam cada vez mais presentes na vida do aluno da universidade. Houve um aumento.
A conexão da Andréa caiu.
Congelou.
Yeah. I'll go to the next slide. Eu vou ir para o próximo slide e eu posso tentar fazer até que a Andréa consiga entrar.
Houve um aumento de casos de depressão, né?
Uhum.
Eu posso tentar traduzir e você vai me corrigindo, Gustavo.
Okay. I can do this next slide, and then we can go to that. So, and this is just talking a little bit about that Pittsburgh moved into a flex at Pitt teaching method, which is a hybrid teaching. So when allowed, they had permitted in-person teaching. So a lot of the teaching methodologies were connected with synchronous and asynchronous teaching. So, you know, this is definitely something that changed, and the power in making the decision was in the hand of the students. So the students could decide if they wanted to do everything online, if they wanted to do when permitted in person, and when it was in person, university limited which classes could be in person because they were looking at, you know, big rooms for a small number of students. So even the number of students per class diminished considerably.
Ok, eu perdi a internet aqui, já voltou agora, vocês estão me ouvindo?
Estamos.
Estamos, sim.
Okay. Então, eu perdi o comecinho, mas eu acredito que depois você deve estar falando sobre um momento de transição, quando as aulas começaram a ficar online, ou não, desculpa, presenciais, que houve um momento de flexibilização dos métodos de ensino, quando houve esse ensino híbrido, quando a pessoa poderia aparecer presencialmente, é isso?
Era uma mistura de presencialmente, síncrono e assíncrono a maneira de ensino.
Ok, desculpa que eu realmente fiquei offline um tempo.
So the last one, I wanted to show a study that happened at Pitt, which is connected with this graph, which is looking at depression. And there's always an issue of depression, right? So they had already been following this for a while. And in here you have the spring semester. This is only in the spring semester at Pitt. And you have in here the baseline in 2019, in which you can see the number of cases of depression, is a score that they did with the students. And then it shows a little bit of the increase in that part at the end of the spring semester. In 2020, they started doing the same kind of research. However, you can see at the midline, which is exactly when the pandemic started, that number has increased a lot. And by the end of it, it had gotten to almost 60% more of what you had before. So it has been, definitely shows a correlation between the increase of depression and the pandemic.
Ok. Então, aqui eu gostaria de falar sobre esses gráficos agora que demonstram, que estudam, né, que analisam o número de alunos, a porcentagem de depressão, sempre analisada durante a primavera, né, sempre no mesmo período do ano. Então, no primeiro momento, a comparação é com o ano de 2019, e no segundo momento, para ficar bem claro, que esse aumento foi de 60% entre o do ano de 2020, com a pandemia já em curso, comparado com o ano anterior, esse aumento é de 60%, o que definitivamente fica bem claro, bem nítido, que existe essa correlação entre os impactos da pandemia e o aumento da porcentagem de depressão entre os alunos acadêmicos.
All right, and then the next part is to talk about higher education today and the future. So Pittsburgh, for example, at this year, we are ending or just ended our year of remote learning. We do have some cases that study abroad have actually started again, but it is a very different kind of study abroad that actually connects a lot with virtual learning abroad as well. So it has changed. So there is some impact, and I think that we can see that there's a lot of things that have come up with this. And then I just have some items for discussion, because I don't want to go any further. I would actually like to hear from all of you and hear your experiences, and if I can answer any questions you might have. But looking at what are the long range effects of the pandemic, in-person instruction versus online, the training of faculty and staff, which in a survey that was done here in the United States, the administration of most universities came up to about 95% said that this is a priority for the next academic year, is to continue this training and expand the training for faculty and staff. How this is going to be affecting student enrollments for not only here in the United States, but how it's going to affect in different parts in Latin America, in Europe, and everywhere. The different possibilities of collaborations that we might have coming up, and also looking at student health and learning, and also maybe talk a little bit about what kind of research is going to come out of this pandemic, because I think there's a wealth of things that we're going to be having for research, and I think collaborative research between different institutions, different areas of the world. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to open up for discussion.
Ok. Então, agora, por último, esse último tópico, eu gostaria de mencionar e aqui levantar algumas questões sobre a educação superior hoje e no futuro. A Universidade de Pittsburgh acabou já com o ensino remoto, ficando com apenas alguns casos específicos, no entanto, com um tipo de, um modelo diferente do que foi utilizado durante a pandemia em geral. Mas ficam outros questionamentos que gostaria de discutir e que ficam em aberto também para serem desenvolvidos. Quais serão os impactos a longo prazo, né, da pandemia? Como é que será qual será a medida da instrução em pessoa, né, pessoal, e como é que será a online, remoto? Né, como é que elas vão se complementar? Também existe uma grande demanda para o treinamento de docentes, né, e de funcionários em geral, demonstram que 95% acredita que isso é a prioridade para o próximo ano letivo. Os alunos, como é que isso vai também afetar o engajamento dos alunos nas matrículas dos próximos cursos, né, de agora em diante? E os colaboradores, como é que vão ser as novas colaborações entre, não sei se foi entre as universidades, mas como é que vão ser as novas colaborações, né? Como é que as novas equipes vão colaborar? Também gostaria de pensar, né, de levantar a questão sobre a saúde e o aprendizado. Como é que vai ficar a saúde mental e o aprendizado desses alunos de agora em diante? E, por último, também levantar que existe um campo muito rico agora para futuras pesquisas, dentro do que nós vivemos e temos vivido. Eu acredito que há um mundo riquíssimo aí de pesquisas a serem feitas de agora em diante. Então, agora eu gostaria de deixar em aberto para discutirmos, para vocês perguntarem. Eu estou aqui disponível para as respostas.
Thank you, Professor Luis Bravo. It was a great presentation, very interesting. The questions are very actual. We have the same questions. We can't imagine that in a near future we will. Many professors ask talk to me that after this period, probably the online will be part of the presential classes. Here in Brazil, there is one role from MEC, Ministry of Education Ministry, that affirms that that we can have until 20% of classes in the mode virtual or online, and professors talk that after the pandemic, probably we will see a mixed model. I don't know what is the perception of Professor Lisbeth and Professor Romain about this theme.
I think that the situation Luis Bravo has showed us is quite similar to the experience we had here in Brazil, at least at the University of São Paulo. There are, of course, many questions that remain, and I agree with Edgar that in the future we are going to have mixed process, because at least at the university, this new situation allowed people from other states of Brazil, because Brazil is a very continental country, and the universities the students from other universities can follow some courses, some courses that we have in other universities, and it was a very good experience to see people from the whole country, from Pará, from Rio Grande do Sul, from the east and west part of the country participating. Of course, there are the difficulties for people who have a social, a worse social condition, to have the equipment, to have the connection through iPhone, for instance, or through a laptop. But generally, at the university, we have these. They have these conditions, and the structure, the infrastructure offered by the university helped a lot with this possibility of having, for instance, a computer to work on. The big problem for us is in the fundamental, what we call fundamental studies, fundamental courses. And also for those that what we call the medium studies, estudos, o ensino médio, where people have worse conditions concerning internet access, concerning having a cell phone or a laptop. And concerning the health problem, This was a presence. We have some colleagues that work in this field, and they told that we cannot imagine how difficult was this moment concerning the health problem, anxiety, depression, and so on. See?
I can say how well the French point of view. Is there a Portuguese translation between the questions, or can I begin?
No, you can
Okay.
talk directly. I think. No
Okay.
problem.
English.
Well, first, thank you for this presentation. And I think the 3 points, the very early of the pandemics, then a year online in the future, we recognize, I think Brazil and France will recognize in the 3 points. And I also agree with Edgar and Lisbeth. A positive aspect of this pandemic is that now everybody knows how to use a Zoom or something like that. And if in the future we want to build a program like a bachelor program or a master degree fully online or partly online, the question to know whether professor or teacher know how to teach online, this question now we don't ask it. We know that teachers know to teach online, to use Zoom, etc., and to follow the students remotely. I can try, if you want, to say how everything happens in France from my point of view, because it was one of your questions at the end of some slides. Well, I'm in the city of Lyon in France. I can speak of the situation in our university, but it will be the same, I think, for other French universities, because France is a very centralized country, and all the decisions are made in Paris, and then all the universities apply the decisions of the ministries in Paris. So I think that there are few differences between the University of Lyon and other universities. At the very beginning of the pandemic, so in March 2020, nobody was prepared. And everybody is saying, well, see you in 1 week, everything will be finished. So nobody were prepared. And then we realized that there was a lockdown, so we had to work remotely till the end of the year. And all the aspects of the students' education has to be changed. And at that time, I was at the edge of the undergraduate studies in management, so the bachelor, responsible of the bachelor in management in my university. And I can say that, yes, it is a lot of work to change all the aspects of the students' education. The first aspect is the teaching, the courses and the lectures, how to do these lectures online. Students weren't prepared, so they don't have an internet access or an internet access with a high bandwidth. Some teachers don't know how to use Zoom. Some don't have computers or have never used a computer for teaching. The decision taken in my university is that, well, in March, April 2020, you can do courses online for small groups, not large group. For large group, you send a text by email, or there are forums or wikis, something like that. For a large group, when I say large group, we have some years in our bachelor with more than 1,000 or 1,500 students. So we weren't prepared to do a Zoom with so much students. So the courses was a very hard point to solve, but then there was the exams, how to evaluate, how to assess the students. There was the questions of the internships, because in management, in April, May, then June, July, and August, there is an internship to learn how things works in a firm. So that was a problem. Can you do an internship online, remotely? And there is the problem, the issues of the international students. And that was a lot of questions with, at that time, no answer. There was the current French student abroad, foreign student in France, the future French students want to go abroad next year, and the foreign students want to go in France the next year. So since the situation was very moving and very uncertain, at that time it was very difficult to give an answer. And then there was also the problem of the applications. Students want to apply to your program for next year. And usually there is some test in face-to-face or an interview. So this is changed also. And there is, at the end of the process, the enrollment, when you pay, when you meet a professor to have some advices for the courses, etc. So every aspect of the student's education has to be changed in very few weeks or few months. And it's great that we managed to do that, because if we wanted to build a new program from scratch with online courses, 100% online, it takes some years to build that without the constraint of the pandemic. Now there is a lockdown. You must to stay at home. So we must find a solution. From a teacher point of view, or for the responsible that I was at that time, I wrote a lot of emails. And I downloaded a software to count the number of emails. And between March and July 2020, I received more than 8,000 emails, and I wrote more than 3,000 emails. So it was a period where you need to solve a lot of things and to take a lot of decisions, and you cannot face people, and so you use emails. So that was the French point of view for the first period of the early of the pandemic. May I continue for the two other period, or I can let the other people give the...
No, you can continue, I think.
Okay. Then the online teaching during 1 year, it was online or hybrid. Well, in France, in September, October, it was a hybrid process, half of the students online and half of the students face-to-face. Because you need some social distance between people, so you need just half of the students in the classroom. And then in November, December, there was a lockdown, so 100% online. In January, it was mostly online, except for students in the first year of their university curriculum. So except for them, it was online. February and March, it was only 20% of the students face-to-face, so 80% online. And then April, it was the lockdown, so it was 100% online. So it was a hybrid process, or 100% online. But what we've done, not all the teachers and not all the universities, all the courses, or in fact for my courses, for my teachings, courses and lectures, they were recorded and then put on a platform. We call that the replay, and the students can access to this platform to see again my course, because it was recorded. So the students loved that system. because sometimes they do not understand something during the live, and they put the videos 1 day later or 1 week later. They play the video and they could see and listen again the lecture, and they appreciate that very much. And in France, we also there was a big issue of the mental health, many mental health of the students. I think it's our president who said it's difficult to have 20 years old at that time. So it's a good summary of what happened to students. I think it's France, but it's worldwide. And concerning the future, I agree with with what you say and was what Edgar and Lisbeth said. I hope that there was something good from that pandemic, like doing teaching online, maybe for my next lectures, next years, even if it is 100% face-to-face. Maybe I can record my lecture to let them available for students. Or if I have a student in a hospital, I can do an hybrid model, an hybrid lecture, because now I know how to do that. And for students with problems in a hospital or the other, we know to do that. So sorry if I was maybe long, but well, it was just to give the French point of view.
No, this is great. Thank you. I love to be able to hear what experiences everybody had, and it seems like there's a lot of commonalities that we have too. So I wanted to throw something just for people to take in consideration. That's an article that I read recently about one of the universities here in, I think it's in the state of Maine, that has decided to actually do away with their campus so that they could go 100% online. And they have changed so that they can have small pockets. So we're seeing definitely a change in how higher education is going to be taught in the future. And I think universities like ours are going to be looking at trying to do that balance between remote and not remote. But you can see some of the smaller universities are seeing this as a opportunity. This university that I mentioned, I think it's United. I'll find a name and I'll send it to all of you. But they went to 100% remote, and their enrollments increased by 130%. So the number of students going to there has increased because of that decision. I don't think that that's the way to go 100%, but I think that online is here to stay, and we need to look into that too. But I'd love to hear any comments or anything on those kind of things too.
Okay.
Seria importante agora, please, just a minute. Andrea will translate the speech of Professor Roman Bullet.
Ok, eu vou começar com o do professor que acabou de falar agora, para não perder o que ele disse, que houve que, assim, existem muitas possibilidades ainda, e que, por exemplo, se salvo engano, a Universidade de Maine, né, o estado de Maine, nos Estados Unidos, fez uma mudança radical de acabar com o campus e migrar para o estudo 100% online, que é uma grande mudança, uma mudança corajosa. E que, por causa dessa decisão, o número de alunos deles cresceu em 30%. Ele não acredita que esse seja o único caminho, e não acredita que a Universidade de Pittsburgh vá trilhar isso, mas isso indica que existe essa possibilidade de ter aula unicamente online. E essa é uma das 1000 considerações possíveis dentro desse novo paradigma. Com relação ao speech anterior, eu, na verdade, tive um problema, de novo, um outro pico na internet, e peguei a partir de um momento, né? Mas o que eu... ele estava narrando a sequência de como a experiência dele foi ao longo, desde o começo da pandemia até agora, né, de todos os processos, de todos os steps os passos que a universidade foi tomando para se adaptar aos alunos. Eu não sei que horas eu voltei, mas, professor, o senhor lembra de onde ele começou, professor Edgar?
Vou falar um pouquinho, assim, basicamente, né? O professor Romão colocou que, na verdade, tem diferentes realidades. Muitas vezes, Lyon vive uma realidade diferente de Paris, por exemplo. Você tem dificuldades de classes para grandes números de estudantes, né? Ele vê como um aspecto positivo que os professores começaram a usar ferramentas de aula online, né? E que teve oscilações, né? Nos períodos, tivemos períodos aí de aulas que as pessoas estavam mais presenciais, com períodos que tiveram maior participação online. E que ele coloca muito a questão do que provavelmente deve prevalecer modelos híbridos. E aí, nesse sentido, André, seria interessante até você colocar uma pergunta que foi apresentada aqui pelo Gabriel Costa Silva,
Pois não?
que coloca a questão para os professores se, baseado na experiência né, que eles tiveram, que eles estão vendo, que tem pessoas que colocavam que o ensino remoto seria o futuro. Se, a partir do que foi verificado, se isso, eles ainda acham que seria a questão fundamental, se o ensino remoto seria uma tendência de futuro.
Okay, all right. So there has been a question that they asked me to translate and ask both of you professors whether you believe, based on your experience so far with the hybrid and the online teaching, if you believe that the new trend will be to have teaching.
De novo deu problema na internet dela.
The question from Gabriel Costa Silva is, based on your experience, many people said that the online learning will be the future. So, based in your experience, can we believe that this could be a reality or no? The Gabriel Costa made this question because in the past we see many people saying that the online classes will be the future. Now the question is, based in the experience, what do you think, Professor Luis Bravo, Professor Roman, and even us, Lisbeth, what will be the model to be followed in the future?
Start in that. Oh, gonna start?
Yes, please.
So just, I think that we're going to be looking at a more of a mixed way of teaching. I think that the digital and the virtual teaching and distance learning is not going to go anywhere. You know, a lot of universities were already looking at this, thinking about this, and once the pandemic came, just like Professor Roman said, we just moved speedlight into that arena. So I think we're going to continue having the in-person universities, but I think that we're going to see an increase of new programs and new things that are going to be much more online. And also because collaboration between institutions all of a sudden became extremely easy, right? So it's easy for us to connect with somebody that's an expert in another country and have them show up in the classroom. So I think that that is something that speaks highly for that. So, but I think that the hybrid method is something that we're going to be seeing expanding even more.
Ok. Então, o professor Bravo acredita que isso sempre vai ser híbrido, pelo menos no futuro, ele acredita que ainda será híbrido e ainda será um mix de ambas formas. Por um lado, muitas universidades não vão abrir mão do contato presencial com os alunos, no entanto, as aulas online, né, as aulas remotas, vão continuar crescendo e se expandindo, mesmo porque haverá um crescimento de novos programas de estudos online. E também porque um dos fatores primordiais é que a colaboração entre pessoas envolvidas no ensino acadêmico é incrivelmente maior, uma vez que o estudo está disponibilizado online. Então, principalmente por esse fator, é que o mundo das aulas remotas não vai diminuir, nem vai acabar. Então, ele acredita que isso vai continuar a ser híbrido, no entanto, com um crescimento maior de programas, de recursos online, assim como, talvez, de participação em números.
I can let Professor Lisbeth and I can finish, or as you want.
Okay. I think that at the university, I agree with Luis Bravo. We are going to have both things. We are going to have many online courses, online possibilities, and hybrid possibilities. But for the fundamental and medium level, it would be different. It will be in a country like Brazil with social inequalities. It would be impossible to think on a continuous online possibility of study. I think that in that part of in this field, we are going to have many difficulties to improve concerning the possibility of using new technologies.
Ok. A professora Lisbeth concorda que haverá, de fato, uma coexistência do ensino presencial e à distância no mundo acadêmico, mas, no entanto, num país como o Brasil, no ensino fundamental e no médio, existem inúmeras dificuldades para que isso seja implementado. Então, ela acredita que seria praticamente impossível que que o ensino online passe a existir 100%, ou pelo menos, né, mais concretamente, no ensino fundamental e no médio, já que existe uma grande dificuldade de acesso por parte dos alunos e mesmo das escolas.
Eu gostaria depois que o Roman falasse, que a Cristielen se manifestasse, porque ela está colaborando na pesquisa e ela é aluna, então seria interessante ouvi-la. Você pode traduzir para o Roman isso que eu disse agora?
Christian, Professor Lisbeth would like Chris, what's her name? Sorry, what's her name again? Cristielen to take part in it as long as she's a student and she has material to participate, to join us.
After Roman, first Roman should.
Yes, after you, Roman. Yes.
Okay. Well, I cannot say what are the current projects for the future in my university or in France, but I can tell what is my opinion or my feeling about that. And I agree that an hybrid model is a good model. We just have to say what is hybrid. Is it 50-50, or is it 20% online and 80% face-to-face? In France, there are two kinds of teaching. There are the lectures in an amphitheater with maybe 500 students, and there are tutorials in a classroom with 35 students. So from my point of view, the amphitheater of 500 students could be made remotely, because there are very few interactions during that time between a student and the teacher. But as a teacher, we love that, and we love the amphitheater, and we love seeing the students. Remotely, we do not see the students. I never see a student turning his video on during a Zoom. I was the only one with my camera on during the Zoom or other things. So no students put the camera. And we need, as a teacher, we need to see the student, because we need to see if they have understood. We can read that on their face, if they have understood or not, or if they like the lecture or not. So the good model is hybrid. So just what is the good hybrid model? Just a last thing, before the pandemic, my university, with other universities, had a project to build a new program 100% remotely, a bachelor in management 100% remotely within France. There were a lot of questions that we did not have the answer at that time. Are we able to teach via Zoom? Are we able to perform some exams remotely? Are we able to manage the scholarship, the enrollment of the students remotely, etc., etc.? Now we have the answers. We are able to do all of this.
Ok. Bom, nós temos a opinião dele. Ele diz que não sabe exatamente qual é o caminho que a universidade dele vai tomar relativo ao ensino híbrido ou 100% online. No entanto, ele não pode prever isso, ele não consegue prever isso, no entanto, ele gostaria de dar a opinião dele, a visão dele baseada na própria opinião. Ele disse que, primeiro, a pergunta fica, né, é preciso questionar qual é essa porcentagem. O híbrido quer dizer o quê? O híbrido é 50% online, 50% presencial, 90% online, 10% presencial. Em primeiro momento, seria necessário definir isso, né? O que seria o híbrido na prática? Ele diz que alguns cursos na França contam com até 500 alunos. No entanto, esses cursos exigem pouca interação entre o professor e o aluno, e isso facilitaria com que o curso fosse basicamente remoto, online, né? No entanto, outros cursos com menos alunos, 35, 45 alunos, precisam dessa interação intensa entre o professor e o aluno. Nesse caso, ele não acredita que o curso remoto fosse a melhor opção indicada. E ele ainda diz que os professores adoram o anfiteatro, os professores adoram interagir, ver os alunos, e que no caso também das experiências que ele teve online, ele não conseguiu ver um aluno sequer, o rosto de um aluno sequer, nenhum liga a câmera e ninguém consegue se ver. Ele diz que nessa experiência toda dele, ele não viu nenhum aluno, e é necessário interagir, mas sem ver os alunos, sem enxergá-los, é impossível interagir, né? Essa interação fica praticamente nula. E então ele volta à pergunta, o que seria um bom modelo híbrido, né? Eu acho que ele acha que é uma questão a ser desenvolvida ainda, uma resposta a ser buscada. Ele disse que antes da pandemia, a universidade dele tinha um programa um programa para providenciar um estudo 100% remoto, mas que antes de implementar esse programa, eles tinham que resolver responder algumas questões, eles não tinham nenhuma resposta para essas questões. Que questões eram essas? Como é que nós vamos testar esses alunos? Como é que nós vamos fazer, nos certificar de que o aprendizado está ocorrendo? Né, como é que nós vamos testar, como é que nós vamos garantir que eles entenderam, tiraram dúvidas, e principalmente no caso de, não lembro se foi ele que citou agora, anteriormente, no caso de os alunos que têm que fazer trabalhos práticos, físicos, como é que seria isso? Então, antes eles tinham todas essas perguntas, mas não tinham as respostas. Agora, depois da pandemia, eles foram capazes de responder tudo isso. Então, isso seria possível também viabilizar um curso 100% online.
Could I add something else? Something that could be done thanks to what we learned during this pandemic. I learned how to make videos. I have the software, I know how to make videos. And I think that for next year, I'm teaching a course on data mining. Well, if students does not have the statistical background to follow this course of data mining, I can do a video and say, well, before going to my lectures, please see these videos that has a necessary background to follow my lectures. And now we know how to do that. 2 years ago, we did not know, now we know.
Okay. Gostaria de fazer um adendo de que antes da pandemia os professores não tinham algumas ferramentas, e que, por exemplo, agora ele sabe, através de programas, né, de software, fazer vídeos, e que isso trouxe um enorme enriquecimento para as aulas dele, porque ele sabe que muitos alunos não conseguem acompanhar as aulas, e agora ele pode criar um background, ele pode criar aulas que precedem, né, que precedem aquele conhecimento. Então ele pode chegar para o aluno e falar: se você não entender essa aula, você pode assistir os meus vídeos, que todo o material que seja prescindível, que prescinda dessas aulas, estão nesses vídeos. Então ele acredita que isso enriquece enormemente, é uma ferramenta que pode enriquecer enormemente e ajudar os alunos a se prepararem para os cursos em si.
Agora, Cris, podia colocar.
Yeah, I think I can add something from my student point of view. So, I student that took 100% of the master online, and I think if I had received this, if they had said that to me before in 2019, look, you're subscribing to 100% master online, I would say no. I would have said no. And after this experience, I've changed my mind. So I think that's it's something we cannot deny, this value, this advantage we took from this, even though it's a really tough learning. Could be better ways to learn it. But I think I think we didn't talk a lot about the interaction part. And I think that is very connected to the motivations aspect that the Professor Luis brought up, because I cannot say the statistic, but I think a great part of motivation is related to this personal connection, interaction, engagement, as Brahman also brought up, that the non-verbal language. And this is really compromised. Apart from, because we don't have this individualized contact, especially among the students, we can maybe have some with the professors, with teachers, but hardly we have that among us students. Maybe in small groups when there is a proposition of having some homework in groups, but in a master that we take some very short-term disciplines, it's really hard to connect with their colleagues. So I think when we talk about this new model of the future, I don't think there is a role. We need to understand what are the needs, the uses, and the context, and maybe combine this in kind of customized solutions, because I could see with some colleagues, they loved, and I think we have one comment in the sense that they felt more productive. Some of them that kind of don't like expose themselves, they felt less exposed within this environment. So maybe we can think of something that people can customize, and or in some other contexts, as I think Lisbeth also talked about that I took part in some study groups in universities in Latin America, for example, that probably I wouldn't have that opportunity before. And this it's been a year that and I felt really closed. So to them, so in this case, even that interaction was fully online, I could use some engagement in this experience. So I think there's no rule. We need to better understand the students' context. What is the content? What is the purpose of the project? And maybe combine all these parts and make different solutions. But I do feel that's a new path to go. And at the end of the day, I think it's very positive. And that's the way I think it's best to look at the bright side.
Ok. Vamos lá. A professora Cris disse que gostaria de adicionar algumas coisas. Em primeiro lugar, que ela fez um mestrado 100% online. E que, se houvessem dito isso a ela em 2019, ela teria falado que, de maneira alguma, isso não seria possível. No entanto, depois dessa experiência, ela percebe que não só foi possível, como mudou a visão o paradigma dela com relação a esse tipo de ensino, né? Que não se pode negar a importância desse grande passo, mas que existem questões que realmente têm que ser questionadas com relação à ausência ou a essa migração do estudo presencial. Por exemplo, que a motivação dos alunos está, grande parte, ligada à interação deles com os professores também, e que não existe somente essa parte da interação, mas que existem uma série de outros fatores que mantêm a motivação dos alunos viva. Por exemplo, a maneira essa relação do aluno e do professor que os mantém engajados e motivados e interessados. Não existe somente o conteúdo, né, das aulas, mas também a linguagem não verbal, uma série de fatores que conjuntamente maximizam a motivação dos alunos. E também existe a possibilidade de individualização, de customização dos alunos, do ensino, que isso também pode ser feito online, mas que ainda é um caminho a ser trilhado, um caminho a ser descoberto, a ser buscado, né? E talvez isso seja mais viável em pequenos grupos, né? E que, por exemplo, dentro do mestrado dela, a interação entre esses grupos é difícil ter oportunidades para interagir com profundidade, né? Me corrija, por favor, se eu estiver errada, Cris, mas foi o que eu vim acompanhando aqui. Então, no caso, ela acredita também que exista o contexto certo para determinados preceitos para o curso ser online, né? É preciso achar novas soluções, é preciso customizar esses cursos, é preciso combinar fatores diferentes para que eles tenham uma eficácia maior, que eles façam sentido dentro desse novo campo. Os professores, dentro de vários colegas dela, muitos passaram até a amar essa nova forma, porque, de uma certa forma, se sentiram menos expostos, aqueles que não gostam de se expor tanto, se sentiram menos expostos, mais confortáveis diante do ensino à distância, Mas ela acredita que as pessoas podem pensar realmente em customizar, em analisar maneiras de criar novas possibilidades, né? Ela falou que assim, participou de cursos e obteve oportunidades ao longo desse último ano que, de outra forma, se fosse presencial, ela não teria tido. E foram cursos que foram muito produtivos, que ela gostou muito de ter feito parte, fizeram muita diferença para ela, mas que só foram possíveis por serem à distância, né? Então, ela acredita que existe um novo caminho a ser trilhado, né? E que os itens fundamentais para fazer esse mix, né, da busca do caminho certo seria misturar o conteúdo, o contexto e a finalidade desses cursos online, né, para que seja uma experiência realmente significativa e positiva.
There are one comment and one question from people that are seeing the presentation. Ettore post one comment. I feel that I'm much more productive during pandemic because I don't have social distractions anymore. That look good looking in the short term, but I feel that in the long term there is a negative trade-off between this productivity and my social skill, mental health. This is the comment of Ettore. And there is another question from Ryan Soares. How do you rate the short course programs promoted by JIC institutions like EDX, led by Harvard and MIT, these platforms of massive course, mock course? It's the question from Ryan. How do you rate the short course programs, this mock course?
Well, just to mention a little bit about I think his name was Ettore? Ettore, yeah. I absolutely agree. There is definitely a trade-off, and you need to look at a balance between remote connectivity and personal connection. Here at the University of Pittsburgh and a lot of universities here in the US, this connection, the social interaction, is also seen as a very important part of the learning for the students. So if you take that away, you're taking away a good part of what they're supposed to get in interaction. Also because networking is very important. So you do networking when you're getting to know other students, getting to know your faculty, and some opportunities might arise for students that might not be easily found throughout just in the classroom. So, but I agree with Ettore, there's definitely a balance, and I agree with Chris, there's definitely, there's a place for online, but I think that there needs to be a balance. I think that's very important. In particular for the mental health of the students, I think it's important to have still social interactions as well. As for the question on the EDX, I'm not really too familiar with that particular one. I am familiar with some of those, and I really don't have an opinion right now. So.
Ok. Com relação ao comentário do Ettore, ele concorda, dizendo que realmente existe essa troca. A gente acabou substituindo, né, a atividade remota pela conexão pessoal, que, no entanto, ele acredita que é preciso achar um equilíbrio entre essas duas novas realidades, né, entre essas realidades, porque isso acaba, no longo prazo, acaba tendo efeitos negativos sobre a saúde, inclusive a saúde mental das pessoas. Então, que ele acredita que haja ganhos, mas que, no entanto, a busca, a chave seria a busca pelo equilíbrio entre ambas. E com relação à pergunta sobre as plataformas, por exemplo, do tipo de TEDx, ele não tem como opinar, porque ele realmente não tem muita familiaridade, não conhece isso a fundo, a ponto de poder ter uma opinião sobre isso.
I agree with the remark of the first student. As a teacher, during the fall semester, I taught a course on matrix calculation. It's technical, and this year I have very good marks from my students. The exam was very successful. And one of the explanation, but it's just one factor, is maybe what the student said, that, well, there were no other things to do than learning the courses. So, well, in November, December, in France, it was the lockdown. And in September, October, the bars, etc., were closed. So the only thing to do was to learn the courses. And I agree when he says that it's negative, because you need students need social contact, and he needs to talk with other students, to talk also on the courses. Well, have you understood this lecture? Or what about the chapter 2? I don't understand this point, and they talk, and it's a part of the learning. When you explain something to a friend, or when you ask a friend for something, it's a part of the learning. So I fully agree with the students. There were no distraction, but it's negative. So we have to turn that into a positive trade-off, with a good trade-off between the part of hybrid and the part of face-to-face. For the second part of the question, I'm afraid not to have very well understood. You talk about the short talks, the TEDx short talks that you can see on YouTube, for instance.
It's about that massive open online courses like EDX and Coursera. Coursera and EDX are platforms that present massive online course.
Okay. Well, for them, because in my head there are two things. The very short talk just to introduce a subject, and very well done. It's very fascinating, the TEDx talks, but just introduce the subject and present you the very famous points. It's like a trailer. It's like a trailer to go then following a course, maybe on a massive online course, or maybe in a real university, on a real program. Well, the short talk, like the TEDx talk, for me are a trailer, because when you are at the university, or when you follow a massive online course, it's not short. There is a lot of things to do. It's not very short. And when you follow this kind of program, and when you are a student at the university, you cannot just see things superficially. You have to dig, and you have to understand things very soundly, very profoundly. So the very short talk are very good trailers, they are very good. And then you have to move either on a massive online course, but it's not short, it's a real work of learning in massive online course, or in a real campus.
Ok. Então, Roman começou concordando com o comentário do Ettore, dizendo que realmente existe esse fator de concentração, né, de falta de opções entre Quando você não tem muitas distrações, você acaba se focando naquilo que é necessário. Então, de fato, esse fator pode ser positivo, sim, né, quando a falta de opções é real. Ele concorda, mas diz que também os alunos necessitam de contato pessoal, de troca, de experiências físicas, né, de contato, de troca. Ele diz que os alunos dele tiveram uma experiência de aumento nas notas logo após o isolamento social, e que ele acredita isso um dos fatores poderia ser, de fato, essa falta de opção de socialização. Ele acredita que isso pode ser uma das explicações para que as notas da classe, na média geral, tivessem aumentado, mas que ele também acredita que faz parte do processo de aprendizado a troca entre os alunos, que mesmo perguntar para o aluno do lado se ele entendeu, ou o que ele entendeu, faz parte do aprendizado como um todo, e não pode ser simplesmente cortado da experiência deles. Então, que ele acredita concorda que sim, que existe essa troca, que é positiva sobre algum aspecto, mas que ela precisa ser equilibrada, que precisa ter uma porcentagem de cada, que não dá simplesmente para ignorar a experiência que os alunos têm no dia a dia, no mundo físico, né, não remoto. Com relação à segunda parte da questão, da pergunta do TEDx e de outras plataformas de cursos online, como cursos massivos online, não sei qual é a tradução dessa para o português, do Massive Online Courses, mas que são cursos livres?
Cursos massivos online.
Massivos, ok.
MOOC.
Ok, dos MOOC, né, dos cursos expansivos online. Ele acredita que, pela experiência que ele tem, que esses cursos são interessantes, do ponto de vista de que são muito bem feitos, mas que ainda assim eles servem como um pequeno trailer, né, para chamar a atenção, para estimular os alunos e principalmente para chamar a atenção dos alunos para o curso que eles estão prestes a estudar, mas que eles não se aprofundam. Então, o aluno que se propõe a uma vida universitária, ele vai ter que se aprofundar nos tópicos, e aprofundar no conteúdo, e não vai poder passar pelos tópicos apenas, né, pelos pontos a serem estudados, que ele vai ter que se aprofundar na pesquisa e no conhecimento de cada um. Que ele não descarta o interesse e o quão bem feitos são feitos esses cursos, que de fato eles não são cursos tão rápidos assim, existe um trabalho a ser feito neles, né, são cursos que dão um certo trabalho, que você vai ter coisas a desenvolver, a fazer, mas que, no entanto, eles não têm a profundidade necessária para engajarem os alunos ou para formarem os alunos, né? Então, que ele acha, assim, que é um grande tópico, mas introdutório, apenas, dos cursos a que ele se propõe, né? Então, ele também acredita que na universidade você necessita ir na profundidade. Então, voltando ao início, ele acha que também a vida unicamente online seria muito prejudicial ao aprendizado como um todo.
Can I just add something? Because I just want to reinforce, we cannot forget that previously pandemic, the reality we had in terms of e-learning, the education distance was not ideal. We had a lot of prejudice. It was not a good scenario we had in terms of e-learning. So, but now is not ideal as well, because it was just a way to carry on with our studies and kind of reducing the impact, the frustration would have without having that. So again, it's not a good scenario. So now we have the opportunity to find a new way, a balance among these two scenarios, that we went from no online to totally online and try to find new ways. So just, I think we cannot lose this perspective.
Ok. Ela gostaria de adicionar uma questão aqui. Reforçar que não podemos esquecer que antes da pandemia, os modelos para e-learning, né, para o estudo online, não era ideal, e que ainda agora não são ideais, né? Não é porque a gente passou para esse momento pós-pandêmico de estudos massivos online que a gente dominou isso, que é necessário que novas maneiras de torná-lo realmente eficaz e produtivo sejam descobertas, sejam estudadas, né? Que não é porque a gente usa com mais frequência, pós-pandemia, durante a pandemia, que esses modelos estão prontos, que eles precisam de pesquisa ainda e aprimoramento.
I want to it was a great presentation, a great discussion. I think that we point some important aspects like the social problems to assess, like the motivation problem, like the limits of the online learning, and this was very productive. We can develop some tool to make one survey to investigate more deeply this, and it's a proposal that we can conduct this research together, comparing France, United States, and our students at USP to evaluate the main difficulties and gains with this online experience, because it was one experience that we can make more reflections using some data, and it's a proposition that we can conduct this. Now, if someone have something more to post, it's the time, because we have one advanced hour, and we are next to the conclusion of your workshop.
Ok. O professor Edgar gostaria de dizer que nós levantamos alguns pontos importantes, vitais no assunto, que são, por exemplo, a motivação no mundo do e-learning, do mundo online atual, e também o questionamento sobre os limites desse novo aprendizado online, né? Quais serão os limites disso, até que ponto ele se torna produtivo. E ele propõe uma pesquisa em grupo para contrapor, né, e comparar os 3 países, Brasil, França e Estados Unidos, que seria uma proposta para avaliar as dificuldades dentro dessas diferentes experiências que os alunos têm online, do aprendizado online agora, nesse novo formato. A gente poderia comparar informações desses 3 países e trabalharmos juntos com essa proposta. E se alguém quiser fazer algum comentário ou pergunta, agora é agora, porque já estamos avançados no nosso cronograma aqui.
There's no questions for our students. So I want to thank again Professor Luis Bravo for his presentation, very stimulating presentation, for the comments of the Professor Roman, Professor Lisbeth, and from Chris, that is a researcher at ProLan, and from our students that generated good questions for us.
Ok, então gostaria de aproveitar para agradecer mais uma vez ao professor Bravo e essa apresentação muito estimulante, esses argumentos muito interessantes, ao professor Roman, à pesquisadora Cris, que também esteve conosco, a professora Lisbeth, e os alunos que estiveram conosco hoje.
Bom, som desbete.
Yes. Perhaps we could invite people for our next webinar on June the 10th about the cultural scenery in the pandemic. Okay?
A gente gostaria de convidar todas as pessoas a participarem do nosso próximo webinar, que vai ser no dia 10 de junho, sobre sobre cultural.
O cenário cultural e a pandemia.
Ok, o cenário cultural e a pandemia. No dia 10 de junho.
Exatamente, são 2 horas. Ok, horário brasileiro.
Okay. 2 o'clock, Brazilian time.
Yes, so thank you for all the presentation. It was very good moment, and I will be in contact with all the professors trying to construct one joint tool to make a survey to investigate more deeply this phenomenon.
Excellent.
So bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for the students, for our students. Bye-bye.
See ya.
See you.
Professor, pode parar o YouTube, professor?
Eu acho que sim.
Tá, vou cortar, hein?
Tá bom.
Não tem mais nada hoje, né, professor? Tô parando.
Saiba não.
Pronto, podem